Welcome back to another episode of Soul Hygiene, my brave and beautiful humans. I am really excited, as I always am with my guests, to have a new friend of mine, Mr. Ralph Brown, on the show today. Welcome to Soul Hygiene, Mr. Ralph. How are you?
Well, thank you for inviting me. I think this is cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know this is kind of our third go around trying to get here, but we're finally here, and I think, it's going to be amazing. I think we had a phone call that lasted almost an hour where we just talked about the ocean and all the things that you love and about sea life. And I definitely would love us to touch on that. But Mr. Ralph has been 10 years into, what did we call it? I wrote it down. Actually, they're two big words: hydrodynamic technology, which he said is basically how the ocean works. How the water in the ocean runs, or I'm gonna let you explain that more because I have no idea what hydrodynamic technology is. So you can definitely explain that one. But yeah, I'd love for him to touch on that and what he loves about the ocean and the water. And also what's really interesting and what I love about Mr. Ralph is he's trying to get all this big boating, what you call it, the Cup Royale, getting it going. He has is it cuproyale.com. So if you're interested in boating, anything to do with racing, definitely Mr. Brown or Mr. Ralph is the man to talk to for sure. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him kind of explain his background with the ocean, and then we'll just see where the podcast goes from there. So it's all you, Mr. Ralph.
Thank you so much. And I'm just going to take a few seconds. Hydrodynamic is a fancy word. That means moving water. That's what it
That's what
means.
it is. Yes.
Okay. Now, how that applies, the science of it is well, let's face it, 90% of the world's trade takes place by ship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if you go look at the ships that we had 65, 67 years ago, they were great big two-stroke engines that moved very slowly, and they were hooked with a direct drive shaft to a big propeller in the back. Now, jump ahead 67 years and look at the average ship. It's a giant two-stroke motor, direct drive to a shaft, runs out the back to a propeller. See, that's what you just said about 60. Yeah, it's the same. That's my point. The world's a lot's changed, but the basic ship has not changed. The last major change took place in 1957, which is actually 66 years ago.
Wow.
And so the marine industry is very slow to make change because the naval architects design and oversee the building of ships, and marine engineers design and oversee the propulsion systems. And what's happened is when you build something that costs you $100 million on the low end, and on the high end over $1 billion, okay, and it's got to be functional for 25 years.
Yeah.
You don't want things that are risky, because if you have to take it off after 25 years, you can't get insurance on a ship, okay. And as we saw in Baltimore just recently, that if a ship goes into a harbor and something goes wrong and it hits a bridge or anything, you've got, massive 20 million pounds moving through there. 20 million pounds hits the side of a bridge, something's going to give. And we know in that case, the bridge gave way. Something like that happened in Tampa, okay, about 35 years ago. And they hit the Sunshine Skyway, great big bridge. It came down. 37 people died coming off the bridge, and another 23 died from the collision down below. And so it's just massive. So if you can't get insurance, nobody wants it in your harbor. And so naval architects build something that's got to last 25 years, and that's it. So they don't want changes. They're very reluctant to make any change. So you've got to prove it. So we're creating the world's craziest, most exciting proving ground for hydrodynamic technology, okay, and marine propulsion systems. So we want to get 50 teams from 50 different countries competing to make the fastest, most fuel efficient, most maneuverable vessel. Now, how do we do it? It's called the Cup Royale. Now, if all these teams are competing, you're going to have new technology comes out. And some of that
Yes.
new technology is going to be great. Some of it's going to be stink. Like you may have never heard of Evinrude outboards. Evinrude outboards is the oldest manufacturer of outboards. The reason I said, I know you live in the Midwest, okay?
Yeah.
If you lived on the coastline like we do, you would know who Evinrude was. Ever since I was a little tiny kid, I knew who Evinrude was. They recently went out of business. You go, well, why'd they go out of business? They came out with this really great engine. I mean, it was the best engine since sliced cheese. I mean, it was the best engine ever. One minor detail, they break.
Mm,
And they had so many of them that broke. Evinrude just shut the doors. I mean, this was the oldest manufacturer of outboards. Now, if they had taken that and tested it on a 50,000-mile race, they would have known it was going to break before
right.
they sold 50 million of them. Okay. And they would have said, okay, we don't want to sell a bunch of these things because they break. Let's figure out why they break and let's get it fixed. That's a proving ground. So
Right.
there's lots of great ideas out there, but naval architects aren't interested in your great idea. And they're not, and the marine engineers aren't interested in your great idea either, because it's got to be proven.
That
Proven.
makes sense. That makes
Okay.
sense.
So we're creating a great big proving ground. Now, what is it? It's Cup Royale. Now, you say, well, who really cares about a proving ground? Well, let's talk about that. The four largest things on TV worldwide, I mean, in the history of mankind, the four largest things on TV. Number one is the Olympics.
Yeah.
It's country competing against country. Would you agree?
Right.
Number
Yep.
two is World Cup soccer. It's country
That's true.
competing
Yep.
against country. Number
Hmm.
three is the America's Cup. It's a sailboat race.
Yeah.
It's also country competing against country. Are you seeing a pattern here? The
Right. Right.
country competing against country. The fourth largest thing on TV worldwide is Formula One racing. Now, to give you a
Hmm.
comparison, our Super Bowl is our big event. The
Hmm.
average NFL game has 5 million people watching it. The Super Bowl has 100 million people watching it. The average Formula One race, over 100 million people watching it, with a total audience of 400 million people. I mean, that's bigger than the population of the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
big. And what is it? It's 15 races, and it's actually 20 to 23 races. It fluctuates every year, but somewhere around there, 20 to 23 races in 15 different countries around the world. So it's a global audience. Now, it's not nation competing against nation unless you live in Italy. If you live in Italy, it's Italy against the world. Okay. But that's Formula One. But
Yeah.
racing, because the world loves racing. So what we're creating is exactly that. It's racing because the world loves racing, but it's nation competing against nation in a global event with we're racing in more than 15 different countries around the world.
Wow.
So it's actually a race all the way around the world, but it's not straight. You're going to go up and down and zigzag around. So it's actually like going around the world twice,
Wow.
50,000 miles. Okay. But it's open ocean and it's all power boats. So if you don't have it fuel efficient, you're not going to make it.
Hmm.
Okay. You're going to run out of fuel in the middle of nowhere. Well, you don't win
Yeah.
the race when you run out of fuel in the middle of nowhere. Okay. If
Right.
it breaks on you, you're probably not going to win the race either. And so we may have 50 teams that start off racing and maybe only 25 to 30 finished. Now that's eventually. We're going to do this every single year.
Wow.
We're going to build this huge audience. People don't realize this, but boat racing often has bigger crowds than the NFL does. And
Awesome.
so and it's just people right here, Tampa Bay. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They play in a stadium that holds 67,000 people.
Yeah.
It's not always full, but it
Hmm.
holds 67,000 people. Right across the harbor, we have offshore powerboat racing. Sometimes only 30,000 people show up, but other times over 200,000 people show up. You go to Cocoa Beach, where I grew up, Cocoa Beach, Florida, next to Cape Kennedy or Cape Canaveral. For those of you that are younger people, us old farts, We all call it Cape Kennedy. Yeah, I grew up. My dad was in the Air Force, and part of the time he worked with what's called the liaison group between the Air Force and the Kennedy Space Center. So he was responsible for a bunch of stuff. Anyways, but what we grew up with, they have a beach. Yeah, Cocoa Beach has a beach. I want you to know this great piece of wisdom. Cocoa Beach has a beach. But no, they have offshore powerboat racing there. It's called Thunder on the Beach. And
Oh,
the Thunder on the Beach almost always has an audience of over 100,000 people. Again, bigger than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, bigger than
right.
most of the NFL stadiums. Sometimes it's as much as 200,000 people show up. But what's interesting is if you go down to the beach over there and you walk around and say, which boat are you cheering for? I don't know. You go to the next one. Which boat are you cheering for? I don't know. You go to the little girl and you say, which boat are you cheering for?
The
The
pink one.
pink one. I'm cheering for the pink one because it's pink. No other reason. But see, when you go to a football game, everybody knows who they're cheering for.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
we're doing is we're structuring this to allow one franchise, one team per country.
Oh,
And
wow.
own the franchises like an NFL. You got
Mm-hmm.
thousands of football games all around the world. Okay, but only 15 games a week make money or make serious money. Okay, that's the NFL games. 15 games play a week, and those people make outrageous money, where almost everybody else hardly makes anything. Well, it's exclusive and it's
Yeah.
connected to territories. So, like you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Miami Dolphins, the New York Giants, the Denver Broncos. Okay, all of those are associated with a piece of territory, and that natural instinct inside of us that makes us fight for the piece of territory pops out, and we know who we're cheering for, almost all
Yeah.
of us. So if you go to the Olympics, almost everybody knows who they're cheering for too. They're cheering, if you're from Spain, guess what? You're cheering for the Spanish team. Like,
Right. Right.
if you're from France rather, I bet you most of the guys there from France are cheering for Team France. Okay,
Right.
if you're from the United States, most of the people there are cheering for Team USA. And when it comes down to championships, everybody wants to watch. Now, almost everybody you meet, if you ask them this question, if you remember when Michael Phelps got his seventh gold medal? Do you
Yep.
remember that?
Yep.
Do you remember that race when it was going to be? It was him against that Australian guy, and it was
Yep.
like half a second, a microsecond, and everybody stood around on the edge of their seats.
Yep.
Who's going to win this? Do
Yeah.
you remember that?
Yep.
You
Yep.
do. So do I. How many swim meets do you go to? You don't go to any swim meets, do you?
Nope.
None. But you remember that
Yeah.
because it's world championships. And when it
Hmm.
comes to championships, people come out of the woodwork to watch a world championship. People that
Right.
don't. I am an extremely good swimmer. I have a pool in my backyard. Okay. I grew up on the water. I mean, my very first memory in life is the Pacific Ocean. And I'll tell you about that in just a second. I'm 4 years old, and I still remember my very first memory in life on Pacific Ocean. From there, I moved to Cocoa Beach or Satellite Beach. I mean, literally 100 yards from the ocean. Really, about 100 yards, maybe not even that, 75 yards from the ocean. Okay. Then I moved to the Caribbean. Okay, when my dad was the commanding officer of a tiny little airstrip down there in the Caribbean, a place called Grand Turk, Turks and Caicos, and we were like 20 feet from the ocean. I mean, literally 20 feet from our front yard. Then we moved back to Satellite Beach, where we're a couple, 75 yards from the. Then we moved to Cocoa Beach. From there, we're living on the canal, which with the river on the river, and we're about 3/4 of a mile from the beach. And we were walking to the beach all the time. So I've lived on the beach my whole life. Okay, as far as that goes, I'm an excellent swimmer. I never go to a swim meet and watch a swim meet. Never. But I watched Michael Phelps go after that gold medal. Okay. And I
Right.
sat on the edge of my seat like everybody else did.
Hmm.
Come
Yep.
on, come on. We don't know the answer yet. It's microseconds. We don't know. We're going to try to figure. Come on, come on, come on. Yeah, Team USA. I
Yeah.
mean, do you remember? We did that.
Yeah.
We did
Yeah.
that right here. And we sat there, and I bet you most of the people watching here did it too,
Mm.
because it came down to championships, and we really care about championships. Okay, it's
Right.
like this. It's the reason we care about Super Bowl. The average NFL game has 5 million people. There's 15 games a week. That's 75 million people watching, but most of them are repeat people. So there's really only about 40 million. that watch it. Well, for come the Super Bowl, where do the other 60 million come from? It's the people who really don't care about anything else but championships. Okay.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
the way we are. That's the way we're built. So we're creating this race all the way around the world. It's broken into 20 ocean races and 20 harbor races, and there's one team per country. So you automatically know who you're cheering for. So if we're racing in France and there's a bunch of people on the shore watching, and you go down there and you got somebody from England, and you say, what team are you cheering for? He's going to say, Team Britain. I'm rooting cheering for Team Britain. And you're going to find somebody from Spain. They're going to say, which team are you cheering for? They're going to say, España. Okay. And you're going to get someone in the United States, and they're going to say, USA, USA, USA. Everybody knows who they're cheering for, and they
Yeah.
follow it. They care more about it. Okay. And so it's a huge opportunity to create a global audience. And I'm getting wound up. I could talk for hours.
I love it because I think you're gonna accomplish this, and you're gonna find in the end you've accomplished even more just because of the energy that you have and the passion that you have for it. Like, I could literally listen to you all day. It energizes me, and I know nothing about the ocean or the, you know, hydrodynamic technology or anything like that, but it's
Well,
amazing. Love it.
22 years ago, I was in a boating wreck. Okay. And I got pissed off at the way they build boats. And I said, I can build a better one. And everybody laughed at me. And I became a fanatic about drawing boats, doing calculations, figuring out buoyancy, figuring out all this other stuff. And I have a good physics background. In the Marine Corps, they sent me to this unbelievable school called PMEL, Precision Measuring Equipment Laboratories. And we got to learn all kinds of stuff. Then they sent me back for laser guided systems. There were no laser guided bombs at that time, but they knew they were coming out, and they had to have someone that could calibrate all this up and repair the technology that was necessary. They sent me to school on that. Then they sent me to school on a bunch of other stuff, for physics. And I'm going, wow, I spent most of my time in the Marine Corps in school. I really did, in school. And I couldn't believe it. In fact, they canned my MOS, Marine Occupational Specialty, after I got out. They discovered that they spent too much time training guys like me. And we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to hire civilians to do that from now on. We're not paying for their schooling. We're not paying for because guys, we go through all this schooling, and a lot of us got out. And in fact, I got out. I would have stayed. It's a long story. We don't have time on that, but anyways, I got out. And so I was wondering, but I'm got unbelievable schooling. And then I went to college and took physics classes and stuff. And I remember the physics teacher, when I came to take physics 102, he said, just take the stinking test. The
You
Marine
already
Corps
know it all anyway.
the Marine Corps had trained me on all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't take the class. I just took the test and I passed. Okay. And so, anyways, I didn't get an A. I got a B something on the test. But not too bad, having not opened the book. Okay. Not bad. Okay. As far as that goes. Anyways, so it's just a good training the Marine Corps gave me, and I was able to take all of this stuff and apply it. And somebody told me about the Bulgarian. And so, who's he? He's some Marine engineer. And so I got to go meet a guy named Marin Savov, okay, the Bulgarian. He goes by Marino for short. We became good friends. And he spoke broken English, but he was a Marine engineer that built a homemade boat, and escaped Bulgaria before it was still under Russian control, before the Soviet Union collapsed, and a homemade sailboat. And he sailed out and crossed the ocean in it. And we became friends, and we're great because he says, Marino, I'm the guy that does things by the book. He does things by the book. He's an actual Marine engineer. Okay. And so he does things by the book. And then you got the other guy. He's talking about me that never read the book. Okay. And thinks he can do it better. And yes, that's me. So we argue. So we design something, and we'll call each other moron and argue, and my wife gets really mad because, what are you guys doing this stuff? But we argue out every point and stuff, and you wouldn't believe the results we get, because we're taking to me, I go with PML, you have to understand it's Precision Measuring Equipment Laboratories. Everything goes back to the National Bureau of Standards. You have to come back to it. So how do you know it's exactly what you say it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so he tells me something, and my question is, how do I know that's right? That's what they do. Why do they do it like that? Because they've always done it. That excuse doesn't hold water with me. Doing it because they've always done it that
Mhm.
way is a terrible way to design something. Okay, but then again, if you go through the schooling and they teach you what they already know. They don't teach you unknowns. They teach you what they already know. Well, guys like me come to the table and we want to bring something that is not already known. Take a look at the computer industry. Okay, the big guys in the computer industry go back 50 years is IBM and Hewlett Packard. Okay, there's a guy named Bill Gates. He didn't even create it. Somebody else created it. He
Yeah.
saw a program called DOS and he bought the rights to it. Okay, for peanuts. Okay, but he saw the business end of it, and then he approached IBM about it. IBM said, "Nah, we're not interested." Okay, but his parents knew somebody, and so he got back in, and that became IBM. Accepted him the second time around, and obviously, we all know the story. That's Microsoft, and they helped to change the
Yeah.
world. But there was two other guys, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, and they
Yeah.
had this other stuff. And Wozniak had a contract with Hewlett Packard that they had to share technology. Hewlett Packard, they went in and showed the technology. Hewlett Packard was like, "We're the great guys. If this should be invented, we'll invent it, not you." And so you got these outsiders, Bill Gates and
Mm,
and Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Okay, that the big shot, the IBMs of this world, and the
yeah.
and the Hewlett Packards of the world. So we don't see any need for this. Okay, if it's going to be done, we'll do it. That kind of a thing. And these young guys had great ideas, and they had pooled knowledge, and they had massive competition, and a referee kind of. So when you get this referee and pooled knowledge, and you just get massive competition. And now in my phone has much more computer technology in this than IBM's biggest computer 50 years ago. Okay,
Yeah.
because these guys have changed the world. Well, when it comes to the shipping industry, we expect to have not initially. The first year we'll just have one team, and second year 2 to 5 teams. The third year, somewhere between 5 and 10 teams, and eventually 50 teams. But all of these guys are coming out with new ideas. Some of them are going to be better than my ideas. Some of them are going to be way better than my ideas. And they're going to bring these ideas and they're going to test them in the Cup Royale. And if it can survive 50,000 miles, and if it can beat me for 50,000 miles, that's greatness. Okay. And you
Right.
get all this
Right.
competition, pooled knowledge, competition, pooled knowledge, and a referee. You always got to have all that three things. If you don't have a referee in there, it's a disaster. If you've got a pooled knowledge, okay, massive competition, and a referee that keeps these guys from killing each other, sabotaging each other, and everything else in the whole deal. But if you've got those three things, you see things change. And I expect the world of hydrodynamics, all the ships in the world, to change. And I expect that to be a difference. We're running 100 billion gallons. Can you comprehend how much 100 billion gallons of fuel is? Can you comprehend that?
No.
I can't even put. I can't
No.
even. What does that look like? I mean,
Yeah.
100. That's how much we burn every year, approximately every year. 100 billion gallons of fuel. That's just the freighters. That's not the cruise ships. That's not the military ships. That's the freighters. Okay, 6% of the entire world's fuel is burnt on
Mm,
freighters every year. And that amount is escalating. It's not going down, it's
yeah.
escalating. Okay, so what's the solution? I don't know the exact solution, but I do know that if we have this massive competition with pooled knowledge and a referee, we're going to see new great ideas. Now, truth is, I already have a couple of ideas that I've already tested, and they work way better than I dreamed. Way better than I dreamed. Okay. And again, as you know, I have 4 world records in boating.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
stuff is a little kind of crazy stuff there too. But it was from that research that I ran across a different idea. totally different idea. And I said, I'll do that someday down the road. I said, you know what? Let's test it. So we went out and got an average boat, just an average boat, ran it around, got some numbers. So we knew what the numbers were, okay, to start with. Then we made the modifications to it. And we saw a massive change in performance. So,
Wow.
but if you go get an average boat and get an improvement on an average boat, that's no big deal, okay, at all. It's like turning a light on in a dark room because
Yeah.
the boat's not designed for efficiency. Okay, it's designed for other reasons. Okay, a lot of times it's the ease of construction. It's also sometimes they make it look pretty. Sometimes they make it to look, just for most functionality, but they don't usually make it for efficiency. So we went out and built a boat for efficiency using standard technology, most efficient hull design we could find anywhere. And we built one from scratch. And we ran it and we got established our numbers. Okay, so we know what we're working with. And once we ran it enough to establish numbers, then we modified it, weighted to be exactly the same weight, okay, as the other one, exactly down to the nearest ounce, exactly the same weight, exactly the same load, same amount of fuel, same everything. And then we ran it with the modifications. We got a huge improvement. And to get an improvement over a streamlined item, that was cool. And then I knew I had paid dirt at that point in time. Okay,
That's
I just
amazing.
gotta find the money to make all this
Yeah,
happen.
that's
So this has
amazing.
been at 22 years altogether since I fit
Wow.
that block. Actually,
And
20.
you're just and you're so excited about it when you talk about
Oh,
it. It's
why
been
wouldn't
all
I?
these years. Yeah. This
The
is like
fire
the
burns. The
yeah.
fire burns. I
I
don't.
I love
Nobody. I don't set an alarm. Okay, well, that's not true. Sometimes I do, but normally I don't. I didn't set one last night. I got up at 4:30 this morning. Went to work. Okay, don't have to have anybody tell me, bro, if you got to go to work. Okay,
yeah,
I love this. I love what I'm doing. I
yeah,
love the
you're
dream. I
excited.
love everything about it. And so,
I I love like all the knowledge you have about boats. And I've learned so much just in our conversations, back and forth when we've talked. But I know the one thing that I absolutely want you to touch on is your love of the ocean. Like, what are some things that you feel we could do to improve it? Why do you love the ocean so much? I know growing up on I've only seen it once. I think I had told you that, and you're like, what? Yeah, I've only seen the ocean once, but I know when I was there, it was, I don't know, like the peace that I feel when I sit near the water and just I wish I could see it more or even live on a lake or live on the water or live on the ocean somewhere. But I'd love your thoughts on that just real quick while we wind down.
first, I'm spoiled. I'm absolutely spoiled. When I was in the Marine Corps, they sent me to a place called Memphis, Tennessee. And you got, I mean, I was fresh out of boot camp, 18-year-old kid. You have to understand the mind of an 18-year-old. Okay.
Hmm.
There's about 5,000 guys on this base. It's actually a place called Millington, just outside of Memphis, and about 200 girls. So that right there, that was a bad start. Okay. The mind of an 18-year-old.
That's
Okay.
a whole other episode, Mr. Ralph.
Yeah, that was the mind of me. But the other thing is, they told me about swimming in this river called the Mississippi River. So I went down to the Mississippi River and I looked at that mud, and
Mhm.
they call that a river.
I live on the Mississippi. I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm a Florida boy. I lived in the Caribbean with my front door 20 feet from the ocean. Okay, maybe 30 feet, maybe 30 feet. Okay, but in that area, my you know my first memory in life was in a place called Playa del Rey, California. It's a suburb of LA, but it's on the beach suburb. My house was on the beach. So if you ever watch Family Affair, Buffy from the Family Affair was our next door neighbor.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
I did, is, but we were actually on I mean, not Buffy, but the actor that played Buffy. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
our next door neighbor. But anyways, um, but we lived on the beach, and the earliest memory I have in life is my mom waking me up, asking me if I wanted to go catch grunions with my dad. Now, grunions are a fish about that long, about the size of a cigar. Okay. And what they do is at high tide in the Pacific Ocean, okay, they come up on the shore at high tide, at the highest tide of the month, okay, in the summer, and they lay their eggs in the sand. And then they swim out the shore off to sea to have fish eat them because they've done their job. They've laid the eggs in the sand. Okay. And then when the tide comes back up a month later to that same highest tide it was, the eggs then hatch and they swim back out to sea. A bunch of little tiny fish. So what we do is when they're laying their eggs, we come running down the beach and grab as many as we can. Okay. This is, kids. So I'm 4 years old. I got a little bucket and I can remember the moon. It was a moonlight and the wind was blowing hard and stuff. And it was California in the summer, so it was cold, but we didn't care. We're running up and down the beach. And I'm getting all the grunions in my bucket. And then you could see them because they don't come back to the same spot. The next wave, they'll come, down to, 100 feet this way or 20 feet behind you. And so I'm running between piles. And as I'm running, my bucket's going like this because I'm 4, okay, 4 years old. And all the fish are flying out. And my dad is standing there laughing at me and getting me more grunions. But that's my first memory in life. It's actually on the Pacific Ocean. And then I lived in Cocoa Beach and Satellite Beach in Florida. And the ocean, the Gulf Stream comes in really close there. And the water's blue. It's blue. It's beautiful. And then you go down to the Caribbean, it's crystal blue, aqua
Oh, I
blue.
love that.
It just clear as all get out. And then the Mississippi River was mud.
Yeah, that's really what it is. Yeah.
I hated that base. I was only there a few weeks. They sent me to some school and I did really well in it. Then they moved me from that school to another school and I did really well in it. And they said, we want to put you in calibration. I said, what's that? And he said, it's in Denver. I said, okay. He said, there's 5 girls to every guy in Denver. Now, I don't think that's true. But you understand the mind of an 18-year-old.
Yep, yep. Like I said, another episode there.
Send me, I'm going. Sign me up. But Denver was great. The mountains are great. I had never seen snow in my life. Had to go snow skiing. That's a whole nother story. Climbing the mountains, sliding down the snow in the middle of summer. It's just unbelievable. That's great. But there's no ocean in Denver. That was the problem. And I just couldn't stand not being on the ocean. So then they sent me to North Carolina right on the ocean, and that's kind of cool.
That's amazing.
Anyway,
I absolutely, like, we could probably talk for another 2 hours. You're just so full of energy and excitement and knowledge beyond what I know and understand, but we do have to wind down a little bit. So I just so appreciate like all the knowledge you have about both and what you're doing. Like I think that the technology of the world obviously, is increasing exponentially. Every year there's something new. But since that bridge collapsed and that harbor and that boat hitting that bridge, that is something that people think about now. It's like the safety of the boats. And I really appreciate the fact that that's, your mindset to increase technology in the boating industry. But this Cup Royale thing, I'll definitely be watching it when it happens because it's
and also
so
really, I know you're winding down, so Ralph, I'll shut up in a few seconds. Okay, I promise you. But if you get out in the ocean, you see all kinds of trash floating around our
yeah,
oceans.
yeah,
Okay. And you should be able to live off of fish if you wanted to, but you can't because the fish are full of mercury. Not full,
yeah.
but they have a lot. And 20 years ago, people talked about the mercury all the time. Now we
Hmm.
talk about carbon. And I don't want to get too deep into all that, but I think the mercury is way more important than the carbon. Okay. Then we're putting lithium on ships. Now, the idea is that we have too much carbon, okay, which is plant food, okay, carbon dioxide in our air. And so we want to fix that with
Yeah,
lithium. Lithium is toxic to plants. It's not toxic to you and me, but it's toxic to plants. So we put that, we're going to make batteries out of lithium. So what we're going to do, we're going to mine the lithium in Africa and Australia, and we're going to ship it to China and India on ships. I'm going to go over that again. We're going
yeah,
to fix the environmental issue. We're going to put lithium, a toxic chemical, to plants on a ship. We're going to cross the ocean in this ship, okay, with this toxic element in it. And
Yeah.
our oceans, okay, you have a food chain in the oceans. The food chain start with what's called phytoplankton, okay? Phytoplankton are tiny little plants, and then in plants and animals, but mostly tiny little plants, okay? Those plants get the solar energy and they grow, and then the smaller micro protozoa eat them, and then the
Hmm.
bigger protozoa eat them, and then the fish eat them, and something else eats them, all that kind of stuff. But basically, the basis of our life is the phytoplankton. Okay, well, lithium kills phytoplankton. That shouldn't be allowed on ships, okay, at
Yeah.
all. And nobody's talking about that. Nobody. I mean, it doesn't take 15 minutes of research to verify what I'm saying. Okay. And
So with less than a minute left, and I
okay,
hate to
that's the
blank out.
sign that says,
Yeah.
God, shut up.
Less than a minute left. What would you say would be like the biggest thing that you would like to see people really concentrating on when it comes to the ocean?
Oh,
Like,
I
like
would
the,
like to see us go back to the ideas that the amount of chemicals that we're throwing into our atmosphere matter.
hmm,
Okay, it's not that nobody's saying they don't matter, is that
right.
we're focusing our attention on things that aren't going to kill our oceans. Okay, at the
Yeah.
same time, we're endangering our oceans to focus on them. Okay, you got plastics all throughout the ocean, and there's a couple things being done about it, but not a lot. And it's a massive amount of plastics. Okay, and we've got to do something about that. Just that,
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to be serious about it. Not, well, we're going to fix this in 20 years. Okay, let's be realistic now about the plastics, the chemicals that are going out into our oceans and stuff. The
Yeah.
trash in other countries, they're still dumping trash in our oceans on purpose. Okay,
Yeah.
we used to do it in this country, but we don't do that so much anymore. We've gotten smart about that. That's good. But other countries are still doing that. I mean, that's so wrong. And
Yeah.
anyways, again, I could talk on this for
I
15
know.
minutes. You
I
already
know
told
you
me
could.
1 minute. Shut up, man.
No, but that's kind of what I was trying to circle back on is that, you have to be really sure of your core values to really be this energetic and really care about creation and what God has given us and like want it to be sustainable for future generations. I love that about you. I love your excitement about the Cup Royale. And I could probably listen to you talk for a long time just about boats because I love learning about new things. But we do have to end the episode, but we'll have to have another conversation because
Absolutely.
I want to know when this Cup Royale thing's gonna be, and because I know it's gonna happen, and I'm pretty excited for you. So I am gonna end right now so we don't get on another topic real quick, but I appreciate everyone joining us for another episode of Soul Hygiene. Thank you so much. See you soon.